I hope you're doing pretty well. Welcome to another R3 bootcamp. Today we have a very special guest. Suzanne, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Taide.
No, thank you. Well, you and I were talking in the green room or the waiting room about the bill infrastructure that was signed yesterday, and we were just talking about how relevant this topic is and the many business opportunities that there are going to be available for small businesses, in terms of all the different contracts that are going to be public over the next few years. And what you're going to be sharing with us today is going to help small businesses to understand how they can get certified, how they can look up for uh, procurement opportunities with the federal government or state, city, county, whatever, wherever they are located. So excited to have you. Thank you so much for your time, Suzanne. And I'm going to pass the mic to you. You can introduce yourself. And whenever you're ready, let me know and I'll pop up the your presentation. And remember, for all those that are watching us live, uh, ask your questions wherever you're watching us: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. And we will have the Q&A at the end of Suzanne's presentation. So thank you everyone for watching live. Suzanne, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, Tide. And like you mentioned, there's so many opportunities available out there. And I do want to introduce myself. My name is Susan Gutierrez, and I'm founder and owner of EzBiz. And just like Tate mentioned, with this administration and with the previous administrations that we've had of over the last 20, 30 years, the Small Business Administration really has moved forward in terms of wanting to expand government contracts to small businesses. And so really that is the topic of today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about that. And so I hope that you walk away with a lot of knowledge and tools as to how your business can start taking advantage of those opportunities. So let's go ahead and start with the slideshow. And so, yes, really the topic today is going to be finding the key to government contracts and finding that success through small business certifications. That is really going to be the key in growing your business in today's market. So if we could go to the next slide. Next.
Sorry, there you go.
No worries. So my name is Susan Gutierrez. I'm speaker and founder of EzBiz Inc. And I'm a small business advocate and entrepreneur. And really for the last 16 years, I've been involved in the construction field as an owner, as a financial officer, as VP, and really as a contract managing director. Through these past years being in construction, one of the things that I noticed, it was really a field that I fell into by accident. I started helping my family business, and what we ended up doing is we took our small business and said goodbye to all the small contract opportunities, and we started seeing that there was a lot of opportunities in government. And so when we did that, we saw a huge increase in our revenues and profits. And so about 5 years ago, everybody would always ask me, they would say, how do you get these contracts? How do you connect? What paperwork do I need to fill out? Can you help me? And so in that, I developed what I have now, which is EzBiz. And what our main goal and our mission is to help small businesses get government contracts. Next. And so what is doing business with the government? Really, doing business with the government is having the ability to sell your product or your service that the government is going to buy. Most of the time, they are looking at competitive pricing. There are instances where you can get sole source contracts where the competitive price really is not going to matter because you'll be locked in. But really, ideally, Doing business with the government means selling your product or your services to them at a competitive price. One of the main things that you'll need to do is to register your small business with the government. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as to how you're going to be able to do that, because that is going to be key for you to do business with the government. Next. So when we talk about government contracts, really I want to share with you is that the government just in 2019 and even in 2020, over $600 billion were spent by the government. And that's everything. That has nothing to do with the set-aside contracts that they're doing, but over $600 billion. And we're talking about everything from building operations to, with the pandemic, with health and maintenance and IT, food, anything you can think of. The government buys anything and everything from computers to cars to insurances to doing business with realtors. Anything you can think of, they are purchasing. Now, out of those 600 billion, 23% of that money must go to certified small businesses. It must go to certified small businesses. And so we're going to share a little bit with you today on how you can do that. Next. So when we talk about the contract set-asides, a set-aside is really, it's money set aside specifically for small businesses and for these other categories that we're going to go over today. 23%, like I mentioned, must go to certified small businesses of the money that the government is spending. 5% must go to women-owned businesses, 5% to small disadvantaged businesses, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. 3% to service disabled, and 3% to historically underutilized business zones. So that is an area that is actually not very tapped into, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And so some of the benefits of doing work with the government, of course, you're going to look at higher profits, higher revenue, the contribution to development for local economic development. Next. So government contract set aside. So according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, otherwise known as the SBA, in the past fiscal year, 145 billion in contracts were awarded to small businesses. And so that was an increase from the previous year. It increased by 13 billion. So just as we talked earlier on, and with the changes that we're seeing in our administration, the opportunities are available. And a lot of people are not taking advantage of it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, because we're actually seeing individuals, the contract amounts, the number of small businesses decrease. And so even though we are seeing an increase in the dollar amounts, we're seeing participation with small businesses actually go down. And so it's opening up a lot of doors because now there's less competition that's being available. So agencies spend 82 billion on small business subcontracts. So that's another key number there. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how government contractors, the small business participants, are declining. So there was a report put out by Goldman and Sachs for the Action Committee Center Forward. And what they're talking about in this report was that first-time contracts with federal government went down by 79% in just the last 17 years. 79%. So just in the last decade alone, that participation of small businesses declined by 38%. So what we want to talk about is, what are the reasons? What's the reason that you see these small businesses participating less? And if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So 54% of small businesses said that the federal procurement process is just too time consuming. And so when we talk about time, they're talking about the resources that are being available to them. For example, they have to increase their staff. They have to increase hours. And so more than 50% of the participants are saying that it's just too time consuming. It's costing them too much money in terms of staffing. 42% said that they had insufficient information about some of these opportunities. These opportunities, when we talk about the SBA, a lot of people immediately think that it correlates to business loans, when in reality, they provide many more resources than just business loans. They provide small business certifications, and that is a gateway into the government contracts. 42% said that the process was just too complicated, and 31% again said that the process was too expensive. So 38% decline just in the last decade is a big number. So if we go to the next slide, I'll share with you some good news. Okay, so just in 2020, that goal of 23% that the government has for set aside small businesses actually increased. It increased by 3%. So it went up to 26%. And what that did, and it was in direct correlation to the Reauthorization Act of 1997, was actually opened up things for small businesses such as the financial assistance portion, competitive programs, procurement opportunities, women business enterprises in underserved areas. So if we go to the next slide, next. So just as Tate mentioned, the Biden administration, just in June even, they announced that their efforts for underserved small businesses were going to expand, that those efforts were going to expand for those contracting efforts. So the new goals right now are looking to extend up to 10%. So to grow from 5% to 10% participation is going to be the new goal. Just in the next 5 years, that's an increase to 100 billion. So that's a big, big increase that we're going to be seeing in that. Next. Next. I apologize, it looks like I duplicated a slide here. So the small business certification requirements, what is required for you to become a small business firm? Now, I want to go back to why it's important. If you do services, if you do services or you sell a product, chances are the government is buying, again, they are buying everything and anything. And so with the small business certification, what will happen is you will be provided opportunities to bid on bid on projects or contracts that are specifically set aside to you. On the contract documents, you will see that that contract will either be set aside for a small business firm, a woman-owned business, and so it'll narrow down the playing field so that way you have a better opportunity to get those contracts. And so for small business certification, here are some of the requirements. The requirements are definitely, your business will need to be independently owned and operated, not dominant in the field. The state that you are applying for that certification, for example, I'm in Southern California. If you were applying here in California for a small business certification, you would need to reside in California. Your business would also need to be in California. So that's going to be key for the small business certification requirement. Next. Okay. Other requirements are for businesses with 100 or fewer employees and any of their owners or affiliates, the annual gross receipts would need to be under $15 million or less for the last 3 years. So if your business has made under 15 million in the last 3 years, you would qualify for this. Now, if you're a manufacturer with 100 employees or less, you would qualify as what they call a micro business. And you would be designated that certification as long as your receipts are 5 million or less with under those set employees, under 20, under 100. Okay, next. Okay,
So let's focus on
now women business enterprise. I do want to mention something. Right now, the set asides are only, like we mentioned, 5% for women business enterprise. Some of the requirements for that are to be a small business according to the SBA size standards. So what will happen is, according to whatever your next code is, which is basically a classification code for what it is that you do, what service you sell, or what product you sell, you will fall under a certain next code. That next code specifically will say, okay, if you're in construction, for example, you need to make under 23 million. And so there'll be a different category for you depending on what your next code is. And so you would have to fall under those SBA size standards. You would need to be at least 51% owned and controlled by a woman who is a US citizen, and the woman would need to be able to manage day-to-day operations. And one interesting fact is you cannot be certified as a woman-owned business with more than one company. For example, if you are a partner in 2 companies, you cannot be certified as a woman-owned business in both companies. It would just need to be in one, because again, you would need to be able to prove that you are managing the day-to-day operations and making long-term decisions, and just dedicated to one. So, and this I would really recommend to women out there who are in business, because a lot of them, you will say you are woman-owned, but you're not certified. If you're certified, it's going to open up just more pathways to contract opportunities. Next. So disadvantaged business enterprise. This is another one. This is the one that we're talking about is going to increase from the 5% to 10% over the next few years. This one, your firm must be 51% owned and controlled by one or more disadvantaged persons. The disadvantaged person or persons must be socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged. And also the firm must be small according to the SBA standards. And if we go to the next slide, I'll tell you what the SBA considers, what specifically they presume means disadvantaged business group. So what they mean by that is it would include women, African Americans or Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans of Asian descent, or any other minority groups found to be disadvantaged by the US SBA. Okay. Other factors also that they'll look into for disadvantaged business enterprises, otherwise known as DBE, are your business size, personal net worth, and independence of other businesses. So it's really important that they know that you're not fully running another business as well. Otherwise, that DBE wouldn't apply to you. So on to the next slide, please. So we also have service disabled veteran business. Our veterans are having a very tough time coming back from overseas. And so what we really want to promote is for veterans to start their businesses, to get certified as a disabled veteran-owned business, if that is something that applies to them, or veteran-owned business. Part of that would be, again, to have the 51% owned and controlled by one or more service-disabled veteran, and for them to be managing the day-to-day operations, and also have a service-connected disability. There is other veteran-owned certifications that the disabled doesn't fall into, that they could also get certified. But the disabled veteran-owned business is one that a lot of people are not utilizing right now, and there is a lot of bid opportunities in that one. Next slide. So what are the next steps? So the next steps really, once you've decided that you want to start doing work with the government, is to obtain a DUNS number. A DUNS number is going to be super important for you in terms of being able to have the ability to be able to provide proposals and provide contracts. It is a number that they look at to be able to look at your credit worthiness. And so I would encourage you to visit www.dnb.com to start off that process. It's really quick, and they do look at your address where you're at. So if you have a P.O. box, it's not recommended. So please go on and obtain a DUNS number as quickly as possible. The second thing that you'll want to do is to register your business in the System of Award Management. Its acronym is SAM. You can